Melanie Joly actually said something newsworthy. I can't believe I didn't catch this until now. She said that Canada's goal, and she's the foreign minister, so this isn't a pundit, this isn't a backbencher, this isn't some crank, this isn't some junior person. This is the foreign minister. This is the real deal. This is our woman who's going to go head to head with Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin. She said calmly, clearly, it wasn't blurted out in an accident. She said, our goal as a country is regime change in Russia. And in case you were wondering, it was definitely the goal, she said. Here, take a look.
Heard you use before, referring to Russia, you talked about regime change. And I was just wondering, at what point in time did that become Canada's policy to advocate for? And I wanted to ask Minister Ditfeld if that's the right approach to advocate for when it comes to Russia.
Well, we believe that we need to isolate Russia diplomatically, economically, and politically, and that is the regime that I'm referring to, of course. And as I mentioned earlier in the discussion, I always make a difference between the regime and the people of a given country, which is fundamental. I think also that we've imposed very strong sanctions, more than 2,000 sanctions since the beginning of the war. The goal is definitely to do that, is to weaken Russia's ability to launch very difficult attacks against Ukraine. We want also to make sure that the Putin and his enablers are held to account, and that's why I also referred to the different actions we're taking regarding accountability when it comes to war crimes, when it comes to crimes against humanity, and also the crime of aggression.
Now, look, I understand helping to defend Ukraine by sending weapons. I understand that. It's a bit embarrassing when you literally send one tank. I don't know why we did that. That's a German-made Leopard tank. That's what it's called. I don't know. Was it the only one that was up to par with the other NATO countries sending Leopard tanks? Was it the only one that was maintained and working well? Was it the only one we could spare? I don't know. Why just one? So I get sending weapons. Of course, there's the question of who will operate these weapons, who will maintain them, who will fix them. I'm not sure how practical it is to train the Ukrainian army on new equipment in the middle of a war. How long does tank training normally take? Months? I'm guessing. Maybe if you know how to drive a Russian tank, which is what they use in Ukraine, maybe really quickly, a few weeks, you could run the Leopard 2 tank. I don't know. But how long would it take to learn how to do maintenance of it? How long would it be? I don't know. I just don't know. I'm not an expert in those things, but I can understand it, or at least I understand the idea. I also understand the idea of sending cash too, but it makes me more nervous given how corrupt Russia and Ukraine both are. I mean, take it from this guy.
Pre-war, the Ukrainian government is one of the worst in the world. Corrupt, controlled by a few rich people. I mean, really unfortunate for the people in Ukraine.
Yeah, even Bill Gates knows that. And I understand economic sanctions on Russia. Joly announced, it was actually Chrystia Freeland who announced a couple more of those too. Here's how the Canadian press reported those new sanctions. Here it is as picked up by the National Post. Also Friday, Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland announced a ban on imports of steel and aluminum, which she said will help undermine Moscow's ongoing invasion of Ukraine. Figures from the Department of Industry show that Canada imported $208 million in steel products from Russia in 2021 and $79 million last year. Canada also imported $44 million in aluminum from Russia in 2021 and another $16 million last year. So you can see it's already plunging anyways. Now, I Googled the size of Canadian iron and steel market because I didn't know. And if this study is right, the market is $11.6 billion last year. So Russian imports, they're not even close to even 1% of our steel uses. I just don't think this is going to dent the Russian economy. I think it's more symbolism. By the way, if you remember when we sent Jeremy Lafredo to Moscow to see what life is like for ordinary people during the war, he reported that Google Pay and Apple Pay, you know what those are? Those are the payment processors on your phone and your smartwatch. They work in Moscow. They just don't work with Canadian or American banks, but that's the banks doing that. It's not Google or Apple. They're still doing tons of business in Russia. There's still plenty of trade going on between the West and Russia. And of course, Trudeau personally intervened to amend Canada's sanctions last year so that SNC-Lavalin could repair Russia's natural gas pipeline turbines, which I dare say is a bit more strategically important to Putin than $16 million worth of steel exports. So I get sending tanks or sending tank. I get sending cash, though I really doubt that money is going to go where it's intended. I'm sorry. I'm skeptical of all politicians, but Ukraine really, they're so sketchy over there. Every party over there, frankly. I mean, just do a Google search, if you like, for Zelensky and the Pandora Papers. You've probably heard of the Panama Papers, the Pandora Papers. You'll see thousands of stories about Vladimir Zelensky hiding money in secret offshore accounts. It was revealed in a massive investigation dubbed the Pandora Papers, but you'll notice that all of those stories are dated 2021 or earlier. For some reason, the media stopped talking about that corruption after Russia invaded and Ukraine became the new thing. So I get the photo ops, I get the sanctions, I get sending the tank, I get it, and I think it's appropriate that Canada express its opposition to countries invading each other. But regime change in Russia. Even during the Cold War, I don't think that NATO ever called for the death or assassination or removal or regime change of the Soviet Union. I don't think anyone ever said that. I think certain things were off limits for perhaps moral or legal reasons, but also for pragmatic reasons. If you say, I'm going to try and assassinate or remove the Russian, or at the time the Soviet leader, it was a giant game of tit for tat and brinksmanship, you would expect that they would do the same to you. I mean, has Trudeau or Melanie Joly called for regime change against any other leader in the world? I mean, anywhere. That was an excerpt from the Ezra Levant show. I'm Ezra Levant. Every weekday, I do a monologue about the topic of the day. Then I interview a fascinating guest, either in studio or via Skype. And then I read your mail, whether it's fan mail or hate mail, which is sometimes even more interesting. This is on our premium service, though, called Rebel News Plus. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. It's $8 a month or less if you buy a whole year in advance. You get my show every weeknight, plus Sheila Gunn Reid's show every week. It's called The Gun Show. It's pretty amazing. You know, we rely on you because we do not take a dime from the government. In Canada, that makes us almost unique. So please help us out and help yourself to some great journalism at rebelnewsplus.com.